I'm one of the co-founders of a group here in Chicago called the Voxelles, Chicago's Women in Game Development, and we're a group that's trying to foster gender diversity in the video game industry. And I think that what the Voxelles do is important because I think having diverse perspectives is very important, and it helps create better games that have a little bit more realistic perspectives that are lent to them. If you can get a more diverse audience, so that if you can sort of like get a view of the life that other people have lived, then you can have more empathy in your games. And that relates to the game jam that we just did this weekend, where the theme was empathy. I work at Microsoft, and I have been working here in Chicago for 4 years. This is my first career out of college. I did not go to college here, so I am not one of the alums. I went to Central Washington University, where I got a major in computer science and a minor in communications. And I will very shortly, like in less than a week, be actually transferring to Seattle. I'm going to go live in Redmond to work on some like virtual reality and mixed reality for Microsoft.
Woo!
Yeah! This is my last public speaking engagement in Chicago I will ever do.
Wow. Ever? What?
Unless like BitBash invites me back or something. Who knows what BitBash is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's an indie game festival, and it's the coolest of its kind, and you should definitely go to bitbashchicago.com, and I'm not even affiliated with it, so I'm not plugging it because I'm sponsoring them. It's just that cool. It's definitely that cool. But I digress. I should get into the games. Yeah. Can I borrow that chair?
Yeah, please do.
All right. Thank you so much, Josh. Round of applause for Josh. For okay. All right. So I'm gonna be out of the camera frame, but that's okay because I'm not that interesting. Okay. So we're gonna have some fun ADD PowerPoints today. So I might be hopping all over the place, and I hope you can keep up. I like this page because it establishes right off the bat that speaking English is already a privilege. So, you know that phrase, check your privilege? If you want to be a game designer, like lesson 1, if you speak English, you are already at an advantage of all the other cities, like these cities. So if you take a look at the top game dev countries, let me see if I can zoom in and still keep them on the page. So we're gonna go back to the beginning of this resource is best cities for video game development jobs. And these graphs, like Rami Ismail in the Netherlands is like one of 49, and it's a tiny slice of this donut pie, and the United States takes up almost half of it. So United States speak English, England speaks English, Canada speaks English, and that is about 2/3. So everywhere else is, like, they speak English as either a first language or a second language, but that might not be their native language. So I don't actually even see Italy on there. Like, Italy is so small they barely even get a slice unless I'm missing something. So the fact that this was written by an Italian studio, they made a point to say, like, we're writing this in English because you need to be able to speak, read, and write in English. So I'm driving this point home because, like, if you say, oh, I'm not that good at games, and I'm not a very good designer or writer or artist or blah, 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 I kind of want to be like, check your privilege, you already speak English, you already have a leg up on a large portion of the population. Moving on. All right. Being an idea person is not a job role, you guys, please. Like, you can't put, I'm the idea guy on your business card. Just stop, for heaven's sake. There was a really good article going around on Facebook, and like my entire feed liked it and reacted to it because the headline was, guy has really great idea for a game, just needs artists and programmers to volunteer to build it. Yeah, so I also like that there's no such thing as the idea guy. You can become a designer and actually put work into building the game. You don't necessarily have to code it, you don't necessarily have to draw it. You can design it and like still get your name in the credits, but put some effort into it. And the rest of this article goes on to describe, like, you need to write things down in a game design document. You need to build prototypes. You want to start writing things down with scripts. You should know how to code. I like this. It says, do I need to learn how to code? Hell yes. Don't run away. Come back here right now. First of all, you don't need to be a coder, but your work will dramatically improve if you learn the basics of a coding language. So I'm going to tweet out the links to all of these so you can read them on your own time. I'm just going to go through and highlight the headings. Do I need to learn how to draw? Yes! Wait, why aren't you running away? Art is something that game designers just love to ignore. So you should learn how to draw, you should learn how to code. And there's really great resources in here, like for people who are running game jams, awesome game jams like the one Josh just threw this weekend. There are lots of links right here, like the Game Jam Survival Guide. You were asking for tips and tricks of how do I throw a game jam. There's tons of them here. The IGDA puts on games, Global Game Jam does, Ludum Dare, Experimental Gameplay Project. So there's lots of really good resources here, and I would just recommend you guys like scrolling through this on your own time. Finding a job, you have to play your cards right. What if you can't find a job? Here's some more things you can do. What if you want to go indie? There's links to like Independent Games Festival, IndieCade, Fantastic Arcade, Amaze. These are all really good things too. So lots of good links and resources in here. And so my perspective on like Chicago in particular as an indie or like a video game city, I've only lived here for 4 years, but I've sort of encountered something that some people call the 3-year burnout. And maybe that's something that we can talk about on the panel discussion later today. But you can see that San Francisco has a big slice of the pie for top game dev cities in the United States. Austin, Texas, we got some Austin, Texas folks here. A lot of people move from Austin or commute like or move to Austin. So it's on the map for sure, and there's a lot of really good stuff happening. San Francisco is obviously where GDC is, and like Los Angeles is kind of near there, just in the California state. And Chicago is over here, so it's on the map for sure, but you know it's not the biggest one, it's not the smallest one either. I feel like a lot of people kind of like there's good programs in Chicago and people grow up, and then a lot of the times they grow up and then they sort of fly away from the nest and go to a different city. And also, if they don't fly away, there's this 3-year burnout thing that happens where maybe they'll try to launch a game and it won't be as successful as they hope and they get discouraged. And I would really like to talk about what to do if that happens, either more in this talk or maybe during the panels later today, because I think that's important. Some important to consider. I don't want everyone to just get discouraged and leave games forever and never come back. Okay, so more in the realm of career advice. These are obviously not all of the game dev careers because like sound is not on here, but these 4 are programmer, artist, designer, and producer. Let's see. Yeah, Jesse Schell wrote these slides. Obviously, Jesse Schell is like a very well-respected professor of game development at Carnegie Mellon, and he makes Schell games. So I trust his resources. So as a game programmer, who identifies as a game programmer or like did some programming at the Game Jam? So you should code a lot, code on a team, do game jams, good job, learn rapid prototyping, finish things, learn software engineering, and build a portfolio of games and demos. You can make a portfolio, you can do game jams, you can code on a team, you can code a lot, but if you don't finish things, you are at a massive disadvantage. So the stress I want to put on that bullet point is humongous. Because if you don't learn software engineering, it's going to be much harder to hire you, and you won't be at the same professional level as people who are working at other, like, more AAA studios. You have to finish things, even though that's the hardest part. If you're an artist, who identifies as a game artist? Okay. Focus on classic skills, I mean, the stuff you learn at art school. Make beautiful things. Get good at fast sketches, that's a nice one. Learn to collaborate with programmers. Communication is key. and build a portfolio. I'm starting to see a theme here. The coder needs to build a portfolio. The artist needs to build a portfolio. The game designer also needs to build a portfolio. So game designer, learn about everything. Write about games constantly, like blog or just jot down in a journal. Design games. Do as many game jams as you can, and work with artists and programmers. So designers need to communicate like almost twice as much as artists and programmers need to. And the producer, build a portfolio. Learn about project management, learn about agile, become a wizard of documents. These are all so important. Help teams solve problems. Learn how games are made. Estimate every game you play. That's an interesting one. Study postmortems and build a portfolio. Who identifies or desires to be a game producer? Nobody in this room. Okay, good. At least one person in this room. This is a kind of the unsung hero of game development. Sometimes you don't feel like you have enough time when you're doing a game jam to bother writing everything down in a game design document. But if you want to push past the rapid prototyping and into building an actual game or like trying to release for commercial success, this is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Agile is a method of working together. Does everybody know what Agile is? Okay. I see some nods, but not everybody does. Maybe we can talk about that later too, because it's very, very important to know. I don't know if I can do like a brief summary of Agile. No, I can. One of the methods of software engineering that used to be popular was called the Waterfall Method, where you just flow from one thing to the next thing to the next thing until you reach the finish line, and you didn't really check in with anyone to see if you were on track because you wrote it at the beginning. So at the very beginning of when you started building something, you would just follow all the steps until you reached the end. And then you would go give it to the client and say, here, we did it, 1 year later, this is what we built. And that's why like you documented everything at the beginning and then you just followed the instructions until you reach the end. So that's waterfall flowing from one step to the next step. Agile is you don't do as much documentation at the beginning because you have to do it much faster. That's why it's called agile. You need to be nimble. So what you do is instead of documenting everything at the beginning, you document a bit, enough to get you going, and then you sprint to the next step. Instead of just like waterfall flowing down, you just sprint to the next step. Then you show a minimum viable product or a vertical slice to that client that you're building this for, and then you say like, are we on the right track? Like 2 weeks later, instead of 2 years later, you might show something, and if you weren't on the right track, your client will not be happy. But if it's only 2 weeks past and you show it to the client and say, I like what you've done, but I have some adjustments, can we go more in this direction? And then instead of like never checking in with the client, you check in like almost every 2 weeks, or you set a certain amount of time, and those are called sprints, and it's called agile because you can change direction, you can pivot, you can take feedback, you can take advice. So that's a really good way to build if you're building it for somebody else, or if you're working on a team. Become a wizard of documents, that's just good common sense, like learn how to use online synchrony. We'll do a post-mortem, which is like, here's what we learned. So you should study that, and so you don't have to you don't have to like reinvent the wheel. If you listen to postmortems, you can stand on the shoulders of giants and be able to like not just do everything from scratch. Is there a question?
What are cool resources to find postmortems for games from your experience?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Cool resources for finding postmortems for games.
What are some cool resources for finding postmortems for games?
Yeah.
The GDC Vault.
Okay.
Yes. GDC stands for Game Developers Conference. They have a vault, and there's free videos, and if you just type in the search bar postmortems, then you will find a lot of videos of game designers who have given postmortem talks. Are we letting people in right now? Hi guys, come in, thanks for coming. Okay. Alright, so now some more cold hard facts of game development roles. We know about programming, right? We know about 2D art, we know about 3D art, we know about game design, we talked about all those. We know sound design is a thing, we didn't talk about that one as much. There's also cinematic art. I was having a conversation with somebody in the room before we got started about like, that game was just a movie trying to be a game. So there's a balance you have to strike between cinematic art and interactivity in the gameplay. What's going on here? Whoa.
Oh no.
Something broke. This I guess I'll come back to that later, but these slides were going to be really good.
Maybe refresh the page.
Refresh the page. Oh, that's what happened. Can I get someone to fix the internet?
Did you get kicked from the Wi-Fi?
I don't know.
Did you use your login or my login?
Yeah.
I use
They're also doing, the problem also in the summers, they're doing network testing because they're changing our Wi-Fi. So it might have been kicked because the texts are...
Okay. Alright, let's talk about someone who saw portfolios at GDC with no game art in them at all. He was trying to help hire people at his company, and he said this is advice from him. He wants to see wireframes, he wants to see textures, he wants to see renders in the editor. What's up?
It's physically
Oh, security. Oh, she's not.
Yeah, it's invisible.
Okay. Interesting.
I guess it's
I'm still
Hotspot.
connected to the Wi-Fi.
Oh,
Put a hotspot
please.
too.
Who has a portfolio?
I do.
Oh my gosh, okay, I really recommend everybody watches Rami Ishmael's talk about You Don't Stand a Chance, because he asks the room, what is your pitch? What is your game pitch? And then everyone kind of shrinks into their chairs, and he's like, oh, suddenly you're all too embarrassed to pitch your video game. That means it's bad, and you should feel bad. Question.
From your perspective, what do you think is more important, or what is the pros and cons of having a resume versus a portfolio? Or
Have both.
Have both.
That's not even
Why-
a question.
Why should you have both from your perspective?
I mean, that's like having a pizza cutter and a knife. They're different tools. They accomplish different things. Does that answer?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry to be a smartass,
No,
but
please do. I was just curious.
How should you structure a portfolio? For instance, for a programmer, take for instance the difference between providing a download zip for the game or showing GIFs and videos.
So
if somebody
I can answer
with
that,
experience
actually.
wants to answer that, I'll absolutely
do.
let that happen.
I can answer that one. So for my
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Rodolfo. I'm an alum here. I graduated this year in my master's. So to answer your question for the programming part of it, it's you showcase some of the projects you worked on, especially the contributions to do it, and then provide a video demo of how the game works or your project works, and also give a link to the source code or the build of your game or something like that. So.
Yeah, Patrick.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I can give you an example if you want to look into it.
I'm gonna put the hot spot on Patrick. So one of our questions was, if you're trying to hire a programmer to your company, how should they construct their resume or their portfolio? Should they send you zips of stuff, or what makes life easy for you when you're trying to hire somebody?
Hiring programmers.
Can they
So
have a YouTube video of their process?
so I recommend that people upload some code snippets to GitHub or a public code sharing site
Yes.
just to show what they're into. If they're not comfortable making something more super public and open source, they can always send us a zip file of a small Unity project. Sometimes we'll do a test and we'll say, hey, here's a particular type of problem we solve a lot. Can you write the code for this? Send us the code, and then also tell us about how long it took and your thought processes and findings there. And then ultimately, for me and the companies I work at, we usually just contract people before we hire anybody full time. So we just want to see how you work and how you think, and if you're not a jerk. And so we like to hire people for very small projects, and it could be a week of work that you do remotely, or it could be hey, come work out of our office for a month and make stuff, and we'll see how it goes.
So the answer is don't be a jerk and use GitHub.
Yeah.
Question?
Kind of going off of that with Patrick, if you're a huge jerk, are there things that happen in the industry if you're just a really huge jerk?
Yeah, we have a list.
Is blacklisting a thing?
yes.
Have you-
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Do you guys know about, I can't honestly remember if there's 3 points or 4s. I don't know if it's a triangle or if it's a square, but I think it's a square, and there's the lovable fool who doesn't know anything but has a great attitude, and the lovable fool can be taught. They can do on-the-job training, so they can then become lovably competent. There's the The lovable, competent person who like just learned and went up the corporate ladder. But then there's the jerk who doesn't know anything, and then there's the jerk who knows all the things. So the jerk who knows all the things, people sort of put up with him because he knows so many things. It would like do more harm to fire him. But the jerk who doesn't know anything, no one's going to teach you, and no one's going to hire you. So it's better in the long run to be a lovable person who doesn't know much, because then you can become the best of all the worlds, and like so you're not a jerk, and then you know all the things.
Also, I don't argue that the jerk who knows everything is going to poison the rest of your team.
Yeah, that's the
And
other
they
thing
should
that
go
happens.
too.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But don't be a jerk is good advice.
Yeah.
What was your original question? Oh, what happens if you are a jerk?
Yeah. What
And we were talking about blacklisting.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, like what?
I mean, I think what really happens is that it's a very small community, and
Everybody knows everybody.
there's
like
only
small
so many studios and only so many studio heads, and most of the studio heads know each other or they are 1 degree removed. And if you say that you worked with me at Fun Machine on your resume and you apply to Young Horses, then I expect Phil to call me and be like, oh yeah, hey, like, how was Jenny? Did she do good work? Was she cool? And I'm gonna be like, yeah, totally, thumbs up. And if not, I will be like, yeah, actually that didn't go so great. We didn't end on the best terms.
And a lot of times that endorsement can mean, like, carries like a lot of weight compared to experience or skill and ability. Like, if I know they're a great person and I'd love to have them in the office and it'd be good overall for everyone else that's already in the office since we're a small studio, that means a lot compared to, like, if they're technically amazing but a jerk.
And it also carries over to the non-production roles, right? We do a lot of event work, and so we hire people just to work our events. And it's a great way for us to work with people for, kind of an informal, low-risk way. And so you don't have to have a full-time job in the industry to get another job. I think we've broken that chain. But, how you interact with people at events and in class and just in public, in society.
Like, I want to know how this
really
person
matters.
acts not around me, and like how they present themselves to
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, everything you post on social media is public, and so people will look at that too. So, the don't be a jerk advice is super, super, mega, insanely important.
Yes, could not agree more. So to the point of like game career advice, we did a lot of game jam stuff yesterday, and we got ourselves very familiar with like sound design, cinematic. I mean, not really a lot of time for cinematic art, but some games had some cutscenes. They had sound design, game design, 3D art, 2D art, and programming. So we've got all these bases covered at your basic game jam. A lot of the games had dialogue in them too, so maybe they had a game author, or maybe you're making a twine game or a visual novel, and so you can write some scripts for your game. So game author's not unheard of, to be sure. Level designer, the slides before this were for like, quick, rapid prototype game design. The slides after this are good ideas, and then going even further from that, like, we're going to depart from the thing that you do when you sit down at your computer to make a game, but you need to think about it. Cold hard facts of gaming, things you need to think about. Level designers just make your game feel good to play, make it fun to walk through the levels. If it's a game that has levels, like not every game has levels. Sometimes they're a twine game, they're like choose your own adventure or text-based. But if you have levels and you need to design them, somebody needs to tell me what a technical artist does, because I still don't understand this. Yeah.
So, you have the art side, and then there's a programming side to it. They just meld together, and then you get this cool thing of like cool shaders and all this really cool effects you get in your game. That's technically what a technical artist does.
Okay.
There's
I
a
know-
technical artist in this room.
Yeah.
Is there?
Depends on the studio.
Yeah.
It really
Technically.
This would be fun to maybe talk about at the panel in a bit. I don't want to go too much on a tangent here. It's funny that I know a lot of technical artists in my life, and I guess I'll never understand it until I actually sit down and watch what you do.
I would just offer that every artist needs to be a technical artist. There used to be a day where you could just essentially push buttons in Maya and then some genius would make it work in the game. But these days, every artist needs to be responsible for their content all the way into final presentation in the game. So technical artist is really a separate role in a lot of game studios because they bridge that gap between tool programmers and programmers, the game engine, and the artists, make best practices for art, all that. But also, these days, a technical artist means that you're proficient in getting your work looking good in the game engine. So it's not only it's a unique role, every artist should have some of that as well.
I like that advice. That's how you separate yourself from the rest. If you're in this room, we want to give you advantages and the cold hard facts, then the tips, then the tricks, the do's and don'ts. So if you want to have a good resume and a good portfolio, you should take advantage of the knowledge that we are giving you here. So if you want to be an artist, be a technical artist. Localization is translating into different languages. That's something that you think about if you want to port your games into non-English speaking countries and make sure your jokes are still humorous and you don't just slap things in Google Translate, that sort of thing. A producer. So it's somebody, we talked about producer in the other slide. It was like become a master of, a wizard of documents. So this is a producer, it's very important. We already discussed it a bit. I spent a lot of time talking about that. But after the game is done, Q&A and support. What does this slide say? It's like a Stack Overflow question. Yes. It says keyboard shortcuts don't work after changing workspace in Ubuntu and Unity. So Q&A and support, breaking things on purpose so that people don't break them on accident later. Marketing. Marketing, it needs to happen. PR needs to happen. Community management, if you're successful enough to get to community management, that needs to happen. Analytics, okay, alright, let me take a step back. A very close friend of mine released a game, but didn't market it. And when, 6 people downloaded her game, she got really discouraged and, wants to drop out of the game industry forever. And I'm just like, but did you market it? Voxelles, Chicago's Women in Game Development, and she's like one of 7 of us in this city. And if one of them drops out, there goes, 20% of all of us. I'm exaggerating for comedic effect, but the point remains that marketing, you can think about it after your game is done, or you can think about it before you make your game. So if you want to make a game that targets a very niche demographic and 6 people download it, hey, maybe you got them all. If your demographic is people who love the specific gibbous baboon population and only do laundry Tuesdays and Saturdays every other week, and that is your target audience, you got them. You're not going to sell to thousands of people, you're going to sell to maybe tens of people. So I'm not trying to tell you don't be indie, I'm not trying to tell you don't make the game you want to make, I'm not trying to tell you don't tell your story. I just am trying to tell you have some common sense, and if people don't download your game, ask yourself the hard question of did you market it? Do you have a PR page? Did you use the press kit tool? Do you have a press kit? Do you have screenshots? Do you have gameplay footage? Are you going to events? Are you getting your game out there? You can't just sit in your living room and put it on itch.io and then expect people to flock to it. People don't read.
That's so true.
I'm sorry. Cold hard facts. If your game gets big, you want to do community management to sort of ride that wave as long as you can. Analytics is just, it also helps you ride the wave of popularity and sales. So if you use analytics, you kind of get an X-ray vision into what's going on behind the scenes of when should we go on Humble Bundle to give ourselves a sale to boost But if we do it too early and we put it on sale immediately, we might devalue the game and make people think that the regular price is too high and the sale price is the only price it should be, and then we just need to make the price come down even more, and then we get less money. So analytics helps you kind of look at graphs and charts and how to best maximize your profits, and etc. And so those are the slides I wanted to talk about. Mostly, have you thought about analytics? Have you thought about PR? Have you thought about marketing? Have you thought about QA and support? I really recommend this talk by Rami. It's called You Don't Stand a Chance, and I call him Indie Jesus. That's he's like the Messiah, and people just listen to his advice all the time. He's got disciples. I don't know, I might be blowing this out of proportion, but a lot of people listen to what he has to say. He likes to tell stories. And he gives this talk, You Don't Stand a Chance, and he's just laying into this audience, and he says, like, this sucks and that sucks, and you don't stand a chance, but try it anyway. He turns it around. The moral of the story is try anyway, but this is how you need to be stronger and smarter than everybody else. So this is like defending a thesis, or if somebody is trying to poke holes in your argument, and so this is how you put armor on and, like, clad yourself against people who are trying to bring you down. So I'm gonna turn the sound down, but so you need to know how much a booth costs at an event if you're going to go there. You want to have a burn rate, which is like how much money can you spend before you spend it all, in oversimplified terms. So your budget is too small and your team is too big. He says you need to get rid of some people. In the show Silicon Valley, there's Big Head, who's sort of a lovable guy who knows not a lot. He's not even really a jack of all trades. He's much more of a master of none. And the sad part of the story is they end up like cutting him out of the company because he doesn't really bring anything to the table. So if you've got a lovable fool on your team, you either need to upskill them so that they know things, or as Rami would say, get rid of them. Give them a good deal if you're, cutting them into the percentage of profits, but you probably need fewer people. You don't, I don't know, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. So your budget is too small, your team is too big, your game is too big. Oh, have you guys heard of yourgameideaistobig.com?
What? It does a project time estimation for whatever game idea you have. You set the game idea and then your team size, and then it'll calculate for you or something like that.
Yeah.
It should just say yes.
Okay, so the freaking idea guy who wants volunteers to program everything for him wants it to be an MMORPG with decisions that matter. Where's, like,
Both
he wants state-of-the-art visuals. He probably wants fast open world. Where's that?
Just check all
RPG, lots of stats
Like
upgrades.
1990.
deep crafting system.
Just the dollars.
Campaign and story mode. Branching dialogue trees with a novel of text. Yeah, and he probably wants some quality voice acting too. And he wants it available on all major platforms. Yeah. Yeah, you could hire a team to make it for this price, or you can make it yourself in about 200 years. So yeah, I don't actually know where they get these numbers, but this is just a fun tool to sort of give people a reality check and get their head out of the clouds and put their feet back on the ground. Like, you scale it back. Oh, okay, time. So your game is toobig.com. I'll send that one out too when I send all these resources out there. He spends a lot of time talking about. Oh wait, no, I'm not letting the
it's just
video.
loading out. You don't see this.
Yeah, you're right.
It does
Okay. Is everybody interested in this YouTube video?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a good talk.
Yeah.
It is a good talk. Okay. Portfolios at GDC. Put game art in them. Then reduce your portfolio to like half. Understand that you're limiting your options by following a specific style. That's kind of up to personal preference. For aesthetic quality, your game jams and speed sculpts are not points of pride. It doesn't impress us that you made a character in one day. So he's saying, like, keep game jam prototype stuff and thumbnails and works in progress out of your portfolio. Leave your portfolio for, like, just the stuff that's not bloated. Your process bloats your portfolio, so don't put that in there. Make it easy to hire you. You need to have an about page, you need to have intros, but don't get too, don't put too much flair in it. Don't get in the way of your art, but you just need to make it easy to hire you, and you need to be a pleasure to work with too. Pose your work and light it well. Shows that even after 2 weeks of work you still care and can add that detail. Environment art, tell a story. Pull the person in and make them want to know what's going on. Whoa. There's a big difference between concept and illustration. I don't want gallery art that I can't give to my team. I want clear drawings with info. Apparently demo reels are a thing of the past. If a reel is part of your curriculum, your teachers are out of the loop. So only do a demo reel if your work needs motion. No one reads anything and no one cares. If your art can't tell me the info, I'm not reading your description. That goes for games as well. People don't like reading giant walls of text while they're playing a game. You want to show, not tell. And your game's pitch sucks. So if you pitch a game with like, oh, it's a survival platformer with zombies and procedural generation, you haven't even said the name of your game yet. You want to say like, what's the name and what platforms are you releasing it on and why should I care? So work on a pitch. There's just a lot of really good advice in this talk. And do we have time for Q&A, or are we going to move straight into the next thing?
We could do a couple questions to go straight into the fireside. Yeah.
Okay, next up is Fireside Chat.
Yeah.
Who is up for Fireside Chat?
We have Alex and Patrick for that. Unless you want to do a couple questions, we go to the fireside chat.
I'm going to blaze through these really fast. Set goals. Make sure your goals are specific, clear, and realistic. Oh my gosh, people set goals. The goal is like, finish game. That's not a goal, okay? That's a dream. Your goals need to be smart. Look up SMART tasks. SMART is like specific, measurable, achievable, or something realistic and time-based. So a goal is something that you can check off and it's a small item. Make sure your goals are your goals. See right here, break goals into actionable pieces. They can always be broken down into a list, and then that way you can actually cross them off and feel good about accomplishing something instead of staring at staring at a goal that just says, write that book. That's not how you make a to-do list. You don't have to write the book. Prioritize by impact. Make a daily to-do list. Make the reasons of why you need to achieve these goals. Avoid things that don't reinforce goals. Do things that do reinforce your goals. Do it daily. Keep your streak going. Track your progress. Set weekly checkpoints. If it takes too long, skip it and come back. Raise the stakes for yourself. Surround yourself with game development. Gamify your game dev. There's an idea. Keep your scope small. Don't set yourself up for failure. Scale your vision back. Prototype early. Start small. Iterate often. Build a game, not an engine. Please don't build engines. I mean, it can work for some, but it's rare. I know we've got some folks who built an engine, but you all got lucky.
No, it's horrible.
Multiply your estimates by 3. If you think it's going to take you, a day to do something, give yourself 3 days. Because everybody's horrible at estimating time. Anticipate roadblocks. Avoid scope creep. Leave out the awesome features. This is all relating back to yourgameideas2big.com. I love accountability buddies. An accountability buddy. They're so important because this whole website that I'm showing you is about how to stay motivated and finish your game. And if you are only working by yourself, you can get depressed, you can get isolated, no one's holding you accountable. So find an accountability buddy. Somebody who you give permission to hold you accountable. Allow yourself to be held accountable, and don't snap at that person if they do, and don't withdraw. I know that's very tempting, but they can only do so much. Find a group, find a mentor, Share your goals with your friends. Don't share your goals with your friends. Avoid negative people in groups. Join forums and participate. Join subreddits and participate. Facebook groups. Twitters. Ask for help if you need it. So in the psychological things, focus on the positives, not the negatives. There's a really big thing called survivorship bias, where you only focus on the games that made it, instead of like 500 times more games that exist that didn't make it. Associate work with something you love. Plan your time. Plan your downtime. Self-care. Don't be abusive to yourself. Don't say, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why can't I do this? I'm a failure. Please stop. Please just stop. You don't have to apologize for existing. Keep a gratitude list of accomplishments. Just read this article. We don't have time to go into all of it, but read this article. Treat finishing like a feature. Turn off the media and the news and the negativity while you're working. Reward yourself, but not against your goal. Celebrate your accomplishments. Get organized. Eliminate distractions like Facebook and Twitter and like things that just take your focus away from what you're doing. If you have a clear head, you can focus better. So eating, sleeping, exercising, all those things can clear your head. And visual reminders, routines, motivational materials, change up your surroundings. A lot of the time, all the distractions of home make it hard to work, so maybe you want to go to a coffee shop, listen to music, meditate, or just do it. This is a very good list, and I really like it because finishing the game is one of the hardest things to do, so yes, good luck to all of you. I hope that we can impart some more knowledge and wisdom for the rest of this day. And there's a lot to cover in 30 minutes, but we've got more time later today. So thanks for letting me have a slice of your morning today. Thanks.